The room was full of important people, managers, team leaders, scientists, all dressed in sharp suits. At the front of the room stood Director Collins. He was tall, proud, and full of himself. Everyone knew he loved showing off. In the back corner, a man in a gray janitor uniform quietly swept the floor. His name was Daniel. He didn't speak much. Most people didn't even know his full name. They just called him the Janitor and walked past him like he was invisible. Director Collins pointed to a large screen on the wall. A strange symbol appeared. It looked old, like something from ancient times. The whole room stared. "This," the director said, "is what our best code breakers cannot solve. It's a dead language. No one alive can read it." People nodded. A few whispered. The screen flickered, showing more strange symbols. They looked like they were carved in stone long ago. Collins smiled and looked around the room. "Only the smartest minds are working on this. Certainly not someone like him." He pointed toward Daniel. Some people laughed. A few turned to look at the janitor and chuckled. Daniel didn't react. He just kept sweeping the floor, slowly moving toward the screen. Collins smirked. "No offense, of course," he added with fake kindness. Daniel looked up. "No offense. Taken, sir," he said quietly. His voice was calm, not angry, not nervous, just calm. But something in the way he looked at the screen made one of the scientists frown. Daniel stepped a little closer. His eyes focused on the symbols like he had seen them before. Collins laughed again. "You think you can read this?" he joked. "Come on, do tell us what it says." Everyone laughed louder this time. Daniel didn't laugh. He looked at the screen. Then, very softly, he spoke. "The gate opens when the blood moon rises. He who knows the name may pass." The laughter stopped. Silence filled the room. People turned to each other, confused. Some looked back at the screen. The words Daniel said, they matched the symbols. A woman from the research team stepped forward. She held a tablet in her hand. She checked the translation file. Her face went pale. "He's right," she whispered. "That's exactly what it means." Director Collins blinked. "What?" "It's correct," the woman said again. "The symbols, his translation, it's accurate." Collins walked over to Daniel, staring hard. "Who told you that? Did someone feed you that translation?" "No," Daniel replied simply. "I've read this language before." "Impossible," Collins said, shaking his head. "No one has. It's from a civilization that disappeared thousands of years ago." Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at the screen again. A quiet buzz ran through the crowd. People started whispering. Some looked at Daniel with curiosity, others with suspicion. Collins raised his voice. "Are you trying to play games with us?" "No, sir," Daniel said. "I'm trying to warn you." That word, warn, made the room colder. "What do you mean?" a young man near the front asked. Daniel took a step closer to the screen. "This language, it's not just history. It carries meaning, warnings, rules, and sometimes danger." The room fell silent again. Even Collins didn't speak. Daniel continued, "I worked with these symbols a long time ago, before I wore this uniform." Someone from the back whispered, "Who is he?" Collins tried to regain control. "All right, that's enough. We'll look into this later. Everyone, let's move on." But no one listened. All eyes stayed on Daniel. The janitor stood there, calm and quiet, but there was something different about him now. He didn't look like a janitor anymore. He looked like a man holding secrets. A scientist approached him slowly. "Can you read?" "More." Daniel nodded once. Then he said, "But you may not like what comes next." The lights in the room flickered. The screen glitched. The strange symbols began to change on their own. More of them appeared, as if something had been unlocked. People gasped. Daniel didn't move. Collins backed away from the screen. "What's going on?" someone shouted. Daniel turned to the group. His voice was still soft but firm. "You opened a door you weren't meant to open, and now something is coming through." The screen flashed bright white. Then everything went black. The room was dark. Only the emergency lights were glowing red. People looked around, confused and scared. Some were whispering. Others stood still, waiting for the power to come back. The director, Mr. Collins, looked shaken. His hands were trembling, though. He tried to hide it. The janitor, Daniel, stood calmly near the screen. His face was serious but not afraid. Finally, the lights returned. The projector screen lit up again, but this time the symbols were different. New ones appeared, more strange. Glowing text filled the screen. "What's happening?" someone asked. Daniel stepped forward. His voice was low but steady. "You triggered something. These symbols aren't just old language. They're a code, a warning from a lost world." Collins pointed at him. "Stop this nonsense! You're a janitor!" Daniel looked straight into his eyes. "I used to be more," he said quietly, "before I chose this life." Now everyone was listening. Even those who had laughed before were silent. One of the scientists walked forward. "You said you've read this before. How? Where did you learn this language?" Daniel took a deep breath. "A long time ago, I worked on a project, a secret one. I was a translator, not of spoken words, but of ancient knowledge. I studied texts buried in caves, written in dead languages. This one, it was the most dangerous." People leaned in. "Why dangerous?" a young intern asked. Daniel pointed at the glowing text. "Because it doesn't just describe the past. It gives instructions, rituals, keys, commands. One mistake can open something that should stay locked." Mr. Collins laughed nervously. "You expect us to believe this story? You were just sweeping floors last week," Daniel replied softly. "Because I was hiding." Everyone stared. "I walked away after something terrible happened," he continued. "My team, they didn't listen. We unlocked something we couldn't control. I was the only one who survived." A heavy silence fell over the room. Then a woman from the research team spoke up. "I've seen this pattern before. On the artifact we found last year. We didn't know what it meant." Daniel nodded. "I do. That artifact is not a stone. It's a key." Collins looked furious. "You're lying. You're trying to scare us." But the rest of the team didn't look convinced anymore. They looked worried, curious, a little afraid. Daniel moved to the screen. He read a few lines quietly, then turned around. "It says something is awakening," he said. "It gives a location, a time. That time is soon. Are you saying this is real?" one of the guards asked. Daniel looked around the room. "You felt the power shift when the screen flashed, didn't you? The lights went out. That wasn't a normal glitch. You opened a signal, a beacon, and something out there heard it." Someone gasped. "Then what do we do?" the intern asked. Daniel looked at him and said, "You stop trying to be heroes, and you listen to the person who already survived it once." Collins slammed his fist on the table. "You're not in charge here." Daniel stepped closer to him, calm but firm. "No, but I'm the only one who can read what's coming next." Suddenly, the screen flickered again. This time, the symbols changed to something none of them had seen before. Glowing red lines, and shapes that slowly began forming a map. "It's a location," Daniel said. "It's showing us where they are going to land." "Who?" Collins asked, his voice shaky. Daniel answered with one chilling word. "The ones who left the warning." After Daniel read the message from the screen, the whole room felt colder. People didn't know what to say. No one looked at Director Collins anymore. Everyone's eyes were on Daniel, the janitor who could read an ancient language that no one else in the world understood. Collins tried to act normal. "This doesn't prove anything," he said, forcing a laugh. It could be a trick. But even he didn't sound confident. Daniel turned and started to walk away. He didn't need to say more. His quiet steps echoed in the silent room. Behind him, people began to talk in low voices. Who is he really? Where did he learn that language? Why would someone like that work as a janitor? Nobody had answers, but questions kept growing. The next day, one of the scientists, Dr. Lena, started to dig into Daniel's past. She typed his name into the system, but nothing came up. No job history, no education, no records at all. That's strange, she whispered. She tried government files, private databases, even old university lists. Still nothing. It was as if Daniel didn't exist before he joined the company 5 years ago. Dr. Lena went to the security room. She asked to see Daniel's hiring file. The guard handed her a folder, but it was thin, too thin. Inside was only one page. Name, age, photo, no details, no emergency contact, no previous job. How did he even get hired? She asked the guard. The guard shrugged. Some higher-up approved him. We thought he was just quiet. Dr. Lena took the file and left, more confused than before. That night, she followed Daniel after work. He didn't drive a car. He walked. Down empty streets, past old buildings. Finally, he entered a small, dark apartment at the edge of the city. Lena waited outside. The windows were high and narrow. Only a little light escaped through the curtains. She walked around the back and looked through a tiny gap. Inside, Daniel sat at a table covered in papers. Books were stacked everywhere. Not regular books. They were old, dusty, and written in strange letters. On the wall was a large map. Red lines were drawn across it, circling different places in the world. Next to it, photos of symbols, carvings, ancient doors, all with that same glowing language from the screen. Lena gasped. This was not the home of a janitor. Daniel stood in the old bunker, staring at the photo in his hand. Dust floated in the air. The silence was heavy. The people in the picture with him, they were all gone now. He had warned them, years ago. But they didn't listen. Now, a similar message had appeared again, and this time he could feel it. Something was waking up. He turned on a small, rusted computer. It hummed, then flickered to life. The screen showed old files, logs from years ago. Daniel opened one. The title read, Project Echo, Final Translation, Do Not Activate. He opened the file. A line of symbols appeared. The same language. Now showing on the lab screen. Then a voice recording played. It was faint and crackling. If you are hearing this, it means the signal has returned. Do not attempt contact. Do not translate further. They will hear you, and they will come. Daniel closed his eyes. It was worse than he feared. Back at the research lab, Dr. Lena met secretly with a few trusted colleagues. They had printed out photos from Daniel's apartment and were trying to match them with known symbols. One young man pointed to a set of marks. These are coordinates, he said. They point to a place in the desert, near the old observatory. Lena nodded. We have to tell someone. But the others were scared. One woman whispered, What if we're too late? At that moment, the lab lights flickered again. The main screen came to life on its own. Everyone froze. The symbols appeared. Faster now, glowing bright red. Suddenly, the speakers crackled. A low, strange hum filled the room. It didn't sound human. Everyone backed away. What is that? Someone asked. The hum grew louder. Then, it stopped. The screen went black. A single sentence appeared. We have heard you. People gasped. Lena ran out of the room. She needed to find Daniel. In the forest, Daniel packed a small bag. He placed the photo of his old team inside, along with the final files. He looked up at the sky. The stars looked normal. But he knew. They weren't. They're listening now, he whispered. He turned to leave the bunker, but someone was waiting outside. It was Dr. Lena. She was out of breath. "We need to talk," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know. You saw the message?" She nodded. "They heard us. We saw it. The screen. It changed." "What does it mean?" Daniel looked tired. "It means they're awake. And they're watching." Lena's voice shook. "Who is watching, Daniel?" He looked her in the eye. "The ones who built the first cities. The ones who left Earth, but promised to return if we ever called them." She stepped back. "You mean they're not human?" Daniel's answer was soft. "No, and they never were." At the lab, Director Collins stood in front of the screen, sweating. He tried to shut it down, but it wouldn't respond. The screen showed a countdown now. Someone asked, "What's the timer for?" Collins didn't answer, because he didn't know. Back in the forest, Lena asked Daniel, "Is there a way to stop it?" Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he said, "There might be, but we'll have to return to the place it all began." "Where is that?" she asked. Daniel looked at the map. "Egypt," he said. "The tomb that isn't a tomb." Lena frowned. "I thought it was sealed." Daniel looked serious. "It was, until last month, when you brought the artifact out of it." Lena gasped. "It was never supposed to leave that place," Daniel said. "Now, we've opened the door." The plane touched down in the Egyptian desert just after sunrise. Heat waves danced above the sand. The wind was dry and sharp, like a whisper warning them to go back. Daniel stepped out first, his boots sinking slightly into the sand. Behind him, Dr. Lena followed, carrying a small case with the artifact they had removed weeks ago. They weren't alone. A small team of trusted workers came with them. No media, no government, no Director Collins, just those who believed the truth. Daniel looked at the horizon. There, half buried in sand, stood a tall stone structure. It didn't look like a pyramid. It looked older, angrier, like it was built to keep something in, not honor something. "That's it," he said quietly. "The forbidden sight." Lena felt a chill. "It looks wrong." "It is," Daniel replied. As they approached the structure, the wind picked up. The team used ropes and gloves to pull open the heavy stone doors. Dust flew into the air. The smell was dry, dead, ancient. They stepped inside. The walls were covered in glowing carvings, the same language that appeared on the lab screen. Lena whispered, "This is the same as the symbols we saw on the countdown." Daniel nodded. "This is where the first message was written, and where the first warning was ignored." They walked deeper into the tomb. The halls became colder. The silence was thick. And soon, they reached a giant chamber. In the center of the room was a stone table, or maybe an altar. Symbols glowed around it. Daniel pulled out the artifact and slowly placed it on the altar. The entire room trembled. The symbols lit up in red, one by one, until the walls looked like they were burning. Suddenly, a deep sound echoed through the chamber. Not from the air, from their minds. It was a voice without words, a voice without shape. It spoke directly to the soul. Everyone dropped to their knees, holding their heads. But Daniel stood still. He whispered to the voice in the old language. The glowing symbols responded, shifting, pulsing. "What's happening?" Lena asked. Her eyes wide. Daniel didn't look at her. "It's testing us, measuring who we are, what we've done." "Can it be stopped?" she cried. Daniel looked at her then. "No," he said, "but it can be guided." Suddenly the ground shook. Hidden wall opened. Behind it, a staircase spiraled down into blackness. Daniel picked up a torch. "We have to go down. That's where the next message is hidden." Lena hesitated. What if we're not ready for what's down there? Daniel looked into the dark. We're not, he said, but we have no choice. Far away, back at the lab, the countdown continued. 42, 12. Director Collins stared at it, alone, afraid. Suddenly, the screen flickered. A new message appeared. They remember your voice. Collins stepped back, horrified. They remember your lies. Back. In Egypt, Daniel led the team into the darkness below. Each step was slower than the last. Each moment felt heavier, because down there, under the earth, was something that was not supposed to be found again, something waiting, watching, remembering, and it had just opened its eyes. The stairway into the earth was cold and narrow. The walls were made of stone, but they pulsed faintly, as if they were alive. Daniel held the torch high. The flame flickered, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Dr. Lena followed close behind. Her heart was beating fast. "How far does it go?" she whispered. Daniel answered without turning back. "As far as it needs to." After what felt like hours, the stairs ended. They stepped into a huge underground chamber, much larger than anything above. The ceiling curved like the inside of a dome, covered in symbols glowing a dull red. In the center stood a black stone monument. It was tall, silent, and smooth. No cracks, no dust. It looked untouched by time. Lena stared at it. "What is that?" Daniel's voice was quiet. "It's a beacon, one that should have never been turned on." He walked toward it and reached into his bag. From inside, he pulled out a small metal device, a recorder from the old team. He placed it at the base of the monument and pressed play. A voice filled the chamber. It was clear, human, but terrified. "This is Dr. Mason, year 2010. If you're hearing this, then someone activated the artifact again. We warned them. We sealed the tomb. We buried everything. But if this message plays, it means the signal was sent, and they're already on their way." The recording crackled, then stopped. Everyone stood frozen. Then the monument hummed. A low sound vibrated through the floor. The lights in the chamber turned from red to white. On the wall behind them, a new symbol appeared. Daniel stepped forward and translated aloud. "The judgment begins with the voice that called us." Suddenly, the air turned colder. The team looked around, afraid. Then, one of them, a young man named Theo, dropped to his knees. I hear something." "What?" "Do you hear?" Lena asked, rushing to him. He shook his head, his eyes wide with fear. "It's whispering. It knows my name. It's asking why I'm here." Another worker gasped. "Me too. I hear it too." Daniel stepped back. His face darkened. "They're inside the monument," he said. "They're waking up." The ground shook. The monument began to split open from the center. Not with a crack, but with a clean line, like a door being unlocked. Inside was a light. Too bright to look at, too heavy to feel safe. Daniel shouted, "Everyone out! Now!" They ran. The stairs shook behind them. Dust fell from the ceiling. The chamber roared with a sound no human mouth could make. Lena turned to look one last time. Something moved inside the light. Something tall, thin, silent, not human. They reached the surface, gasping for air. The sun had begun to set. Daniel collapsed to his knees. "We're out. But we're not safe." Lena sat beside him, shaking. "What did we wake up?" He looked at her, his voice weak but steady. "We didn't wake it. We just let it know. We're still here." Thousands of miles away at the research lab, Director Collins sat in his office. His hands trembled. The screen on his desk flickered. Then a video began to play. It was him, from years ago, standing in the tomb, smiling at the camera. Behind him, the same monument, and his voice saying, "Let them come. We'll be ready." Collins stared in horror. He didn't remember saying that. The screen flashed a final message. We have found the voice. And the countdown, it had stopped, because they were already here. The sky over Egypt had changed. What was once blue was now pale gray, like the color had been drained. The wind didn't blow. The birds didn't sing. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Daniel stood at the edge of the tomb's entrance, staring at the horizon. Lena came beside him, her voice quiet. "It's not just about us anymore, is it?" He shook his head. "No, it's about everyone." Thousands of miles away, in the city, strange things were already happening. Lights flickered across buildings. Phones stopped working. People felt strange, like they were being watched, even when alone. At the lab, Director Collins ran from room to room, yelling at his team. "We need to erase everything. Shut it down." But it was too late. The screen on the wall glowed again. A deep hum filled the lab. Everyone froze. The same sentence appeared again. "The voice who called us must answer." Collins backed away. No, I didn't mean it. I didn't know." Suddenly, the speakers turned on by themselves. The old recording played. "Let them come. We'll be ready." Collins dropped to the floor. He finally understood. They weren't coming anymore. They were here. Back in the desert, the sun disappeared. Not because it had set, but because something covered it. A giant shadow moved in the sky. It was not a ship. It had no engines. It made no sound. It was like a piece of space had broken off and was now watching the earth. Lena whispered, "Is this the end?" Daniel reached into his bag. He pulled out an old, cracked recording device. On it was the voice of Dr. Mason, the man who once sealed the tomb. Daniel looked at the sky, then pressed play. The voice was calm, tired, but clear. "We were wrong to call you. We forgot the rules. We forgot the price. But I remember now, and I accept it." The air changed. The ground stopped shaking. The clouds paused, and for the first time the monument inside the tomb glowed blue. A beam of light shot from the tomb, not into the sky, but into the shadow above, and for a moment, the shadow paused. Then, it began to fade, not leave, not run, but return, back to where it had come from. Daniel fell to his knees. "It worked," he whispered. Lena knelt beside him. "What did?" He looked at her, eyes wet. A voice that didn't speak in power. A voice that spoke in regret. The voice that saved us. Days later, the skies were clear again. The countdown on the lab screen was gone. And Director Collins? He had disappeared without a trace. Some say he ran. Some say he was taken. But Daniel and Lena knew the truth. They didn't stop the danger. They only reminded the watchers that humanity could still learn. The tomb was sealed once more. No teams, no cameras, no research, just a simple message carved at the door. "Do not call the sky unless you are ready to answer it." And below that, in Daniel's handwriting, "We were lucky once, don't test it again." It had been 3 months since the sky darkened. The world had returned to normal. Or so it seemed. The news had no reports. The governments said nothing. The people moved on, thinking it was just another solar event. But Daniel hadn't moved on. He sat alone in a small cabin far from the city, surrounded by paper notes, strange symbols, and recordings. He didn't sleep much anymore, because every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the signal returned. It wasn't loud, just a soft hum, coming from the recorder that once played Dr. Mason's voice. Daniel had removed the batteries weeks ago. It still turned on. He had even buried it once. It dug itself back out. Lena visited him one evening. She brought food and warmth, but Daniel looked tired, different, as if part of him had stayed in that tomb. "They're not gone," he whispered. Lena froze. "What do you mean?" Daniel turned the recorder toward her. He hit play. But this time, it didn't play a voice. It played a heartbeat, slow, deep, echoing like a drum inside the earth. "It's not a warning anymore," Daniel said. "It's a heartbeat. Something is waking up again." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The stars above his cabin began to shift, slightly but unnaturally. He stepped outside. No sound. No wind. Then, above the forest, he saw it. Not a ship, not a being. Just a crack in the sky, a thin, glowing line across the stars, pulsing softly. Like a door, a voice entered his mind. Not in words, but in feeling. The first voice lied. The second voice feared. What will the third voice do? Daniel fell to his knees. Back at the old lab, long abandoned, a security camera turned on by itself. Its lens focused on the countdown screen. Long dead. But slowly, the screen flickered, and a new countdown began. This time, the numbers were in reverse, a voice whispered through the speakers. The answer was never in the tomb. It was inside the one who listened.